Story 1. The Figure on the Road. The clock on my dashboard blinked 1:37 a.m. as I navigated the dark, winding back roads toward home. I'd stayed at my friend's house longer than I'd planned, and now the inky blackness of the night was my only company. Trees loomed on either side of the narrow road, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky. My high beams cut through the darkness, but even they seemed swallowed up by the night. I was driving cautiously, maybe a little too slowly, when I saw it, a figure standing on the shoulder of the road. At first, I thought it was a hitchhiker. They were dressed in all black, their face hidden under the hood of a sweatshirt. Something about the way they stood, so unnaturally still, sent a chill down my spine. I pressed on the gas to pass them quickly, but as I drove by, they turned their head. Even in the dim light, I caught a glimpse of their face, or lack of one. It was smooth and featureless, like polished porcelain. My stomach flipped, and my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I told myself I was just tired, that my eyes were playing tricks on me. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, the figure was gone. I hadn't seen them move, hadn't heard a sound. They just weren't there anymore. The road stretched on endlessly, and every shadow seemed to creep closer. My heart pounded as I drove, my foot heavy on the gas pedal. Then I saw it again. The figure stood in the middle of the road ahead, perfectly still, its head tilted as though it were watching me. Panic surged through me. I swerved, narrowly avoiding it, and slammed on the brakes. My car skidded to a stop, but when I looked in the mirror, there was no one there. The road was empty. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I pressed the accelerator and sped off into the night, my eyes darting between the road and the mirrors. When I finally reached home, I locked the doors, pulled the curtains tight, and sat awake until dawn, listening to every creak and whisper in the house. I don't take that road anymore. Story 2. The Wrong Turn. The GPS had rerouted me onto a back road, one I'd never driven before. My usual route home from work was blocked by an accident, and I didn't want to wait. At first, the narrow, deserted road seemed like a shortcut, but soon I realized I'd made a mistake. The pavement was cracked and uneven, swallowed in places by weeds. Fog rolled in thick, and my headlights barely pierced it. The trees crowded closer, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out even the faintest trace of moonlight. I was about to turn around when I saw a sign ahead. It was old and rusted, its letters barely legible. Dead end. I muttered a curse under my breath and slowed down, looking for a spot to turn around. That's when I heard it. A faint tapping sound, like fingernails on glass. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The noise was coming from the passenger side window. I glanced over, expecting to see a branch or maybe some animal. Instead, I saw a face pressed against the glass, pale and contorted with a ghoulish grin. I screamed and swerved, nearly driving into a ditch. By the time I steadied the car and looked back, the face was gone. The tapping stopped, but my heart was still pounding in my chest. I pressed on, desperate to get off the road. But as I drove, the fog grew thicker, and the road seemed to stretch on endlessly. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw something moving, a shadow. It was keeping pace with my car, darting between the trees. No matter how fast I went, it stayed with me, always just out of reach. The road finally ended in a clearing, the dead end the sign had promised. I spun the car around, not caring if I scratched it in the process, and sped back the way I'd come. The shadow followed me, closer now, darting alongside the car. I didn't breathe until I reached the main road. The shadow disappeared, and the fog lifted as though it had never been there. I still don't know what I saw that night. But every time I drive home, I make sure to stick to the main roads, no matter how long it takes.